My name is Roxanne Hayes. I'm 29 years old, and until that Thursday night, I believed stability wasn't something you stumbled into. It was something you built, carefully, quietly, without leaving cracks that could collapse later. That belief shaped everything: my work, my routines, my relationships, especially my judgment. Or at least, I thought it did. If I had $1 for every time my boyfriend Daniel called me reliable, I probably could have retired early. Instead, I was a senior data analyst paying nearly 80% of the rent on a downtown apartment we realistically couldn't afford. Also, he, at 27, could figure things out. For 2 years, I invested in us like it was a long-term plan. I paid off the $10,000 in credit card debt he accidentally accumulated. I funded his failed online store, custom streetwear that never made it past a handful of orders. I came home every night, cooked dinner, and listened to him explain why the world just didn't recognize his potential yet. At first, reliable sounded like respect. Then it started to feel like limitation. The shift didn't happen all at once. It never does. It started when Daniel reconnected with his ex-girlfriend, Jessica. She wasn't technically back in his life romantically, but she might as well have been. She brought with her a group of people who spoke a language I didn't recognize. Everything was high-value women, provider energy, and leveling up. And suddenly, my job, the same job that funded Daniel's lifestyle, became something to be embarrassed about. The first time I felt it clearly was at a dinner before his Vegas trip. We were all sitting around a long table, the kind where conversations overlap and no one really listens. I was the one paying, of course, quietly, without making it a point. Jessica was talking about a man she had just started seeing. Something in crypto, something flashy. She described his car like it was a personality trait. Then, mid-sentence, she turned slightly toward me. "You should get into crypto, Roxanne," she said, not even fully looking at me. "I prefer investments I can actually measure," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. She smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "That's cute," she said. "It's almost like you enjoy playing it safe." A few people laughed, not loudly, just enough. Then she turned to Daniel. "You need someone who actually plays the game," she said, "not someone who just watches." I waited. I didn't interrupt. I didn't defend myself. I just waited for him to say something, anything, even a joke that made it clear he was on my side. Daniel laughed softly, shaking his head like I was being overly serious. Roxanne's just practical," he said. Practical. The new version of reliable. The look they shared, it told me everything. In that moment, I wasn't his partner. I was his limitation. Thursday night came fast. The night before his Vegas trip, his suitcase was open on the bed. New clothes, flashy pieces, a version of himself I hadn't seen in months. He was on his phone, smiling at something, or someone, in a way he hadn't smiled at me in a long time. "Daniel," I said from the doorway, "we need to talk." He sighed immediately. "Can this wait?" he said. "I'm trying to get into the mood for this trip. Don't kill the vibe." The words landed heavier than they should have. "Kill the vibe?" I repeated quietly. I stepped further into the room. "That dinner," I said. "The way Jessica talks to me and the way you let her, that's not okay." He stood up slowly. Something in his expression shifted. The softness I used to recognize wasn't there anymore. "You want honesty?" he said. My stomach tightened. Fine." He crossed his arms. "My friends think you're a joke," he said. Just like that. Clean, direct. "And honestly," he added, "they're not wrong." For a second, I didn't react. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it didn't make sense fast enough. "A joke?" I repeated. You're safe, Roxanne," he said, his voice sharper now. "You're predictable. You're the kind of person who makes spreadsheets while other people are building empires." He didn't stop. "My friends are meeting men who own companies," he said, "not women who analyze data for them." I stared at him, at the man I had been building a life with. "You agree with them?" I said quietly. It wasn't a question. He zipped his suitcase. "I just need to be around people who think bigger," he said, "just for a few days." Then he grabbed his bag and walked past me. "I'll see you Sunday," he added casually. "Don't wait up." At the door, he paused, then leaned in and brushed his lips near my cheek. Not even a real kiss. Just a gesture. The door closed behind him. I stood there for a long time. The apartment felt different. Hollow. Like something had already ended, even if no one had said the words. His voice replayed in my head. A joke. And then something shifted. Not anger. Not even heartbreak. Clarity. He didn't leave me. He just showed me exactly what I meant to him, and expected me to still be there when he got back. Like I always was. Like I always had been. I walked to my desk and opened my laptop. If something is broken, you don't argue with it. You fix it, or you remove it. I opened the lease agreement first. 18 months old. Clean PDF. My name listed before his. My payment history attached in my inbox because I was the kind of person who kept records even when love tried to convince me not to. Then I opened my banking app. 2 years of transfers, rent, utilities, grocery runs that somehow always ballooned into $100 receipts because Daniel liked imported coffee and niche protein powders. The $10,000 I paid toward his credit card mess when he stood in my kitchen looking ashamed and promising me it was a one-time mistake. The money I poured into his failed online store because I wanted to believe support was what love looked like. The dining set, the sectional, the mattress, the espresso machine he acted like he couldn't function without. Even the smart bulbs in the living room were on my card. The more I looked, the calmer I became. That was the part people never understand. They think the breaking point is loud. They think it comes with tears, screaming, revenge fantasies, shattered glass. But sometimes the most dangerous kind of silence is the one that arrives when you finally stop negotiating with reality. I wasn't his girlfriend in any meaningful way anymore. I was infrastructure. He had just made the mistake of announcing it out loud. So I did what I always did when a problem became undeniable. I isolated the issue. Then I removed it. I picked up my phone and called Samantha. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, Rox, what's up?" "Are you free this weekend?" I asked. A pause. That depends on how serious your voice is right now. "Do you still know someone with a moving truck?" Another pause, shorter this time. "Yes." "Good," I said. "Daniel left for Vegas. He told me his friends think I'm a joke, and he agrees with them. I'm moving out before he comes back." Silence, then a long exhale. "Oh," she said softly, and then her tone changed. Sharper, focused. "Okay, I'm with you. Say less. I'll be there in an hour." By Friday morning, Samantha had recruited her cousin Elena and one of Elena's friends from the gym, a broad-shouldered woman named Priya, who showed up in black leggings and the kind of energy that said she enjoyed lifting things and asking no questions. It felt almost surreal opening the apartment door and letting them in, while the space still held traces of Daniel everywhere. His cologne in the bathroom. His shoes kicked carelessly near the entryway. A half-empty glass on the counter from the night before, because of course he assumed I would clean that too. Samantha stepped inside, took one look at my face, and didn't offer pity. That was why I loved her. She just nodded once and said, "Tell us what's yours." "Everything." That was the answer, but I said it piece by piece. My clothes, my books, my work setup, the bed frame and mattress, the couch, the television, the kitchen appliances, most of the cookware, the bar stools, the desk in the second bedroom, the mirror in the hall, the lamp in the corner, the vacuum, the coffee table, the dishes, except for that cheap black set his mother bought us when we moved in. Priya blinked. "So basically, this place is a shell with better lighting." I almost laughed. "Pretty much." We started in the bedroom. There was something both brutal and oddly satisfying about stripping a shared space back to facts. Mine, mine, mine. Not because I was trying to punish him, but because I was finally telling the truth without emotional edits. The mattress came apart faster than I expected. The bed frame I had ordered and assembled myself with a screwdriver and one YouTube tutorial. The linen sheets my sister gave me for my birthday. The pale gray headboard Daniel once said made the room feel expensive. By noon, the bedroom looked unfamiliar. His side was still there in fragments. A few shirts I'd bought him hanging in the closet because I couldn't be bothered to sort sentiment from fabric. His chargers tangled on the nightstand. A watch box. The cheap blackout curtains he insisted he needed because Vegas had ruined his sleep schedule even before the trip. But the room no longer belonged to us. That was the point. We moved through the apartment with quiet precision. The sofa I bought with my year-end bonus, gone. The 70-inch television Daniel liked to brag about to his friends as if he had selected it with his taste instead of my money, gone. The kitchen emptied out in layers. The air fryer, the blender, the espresso machine, the good knives, the ceramic pans, the stack of white plates I chose because I liked things that felt clean and simple and durable. I even unscrewed the smart bulbs from every lamp and ceiling fixture and replaced them with the old yellowing bulbs the apartment had come with. Something about that made Samantha snort. "That's petty," she said. "No," I replied, twisting one into place. "Petty would be taking the toilet paper." Elena laughed so hard she had to lean against the wall. By 4 p.m, the apartment echoed. It didn't feel robbed. It felt exposed. All that remained was Daniel's version of substance. His clothes, his sneakers lined up like aspirations, his skincare products, his ring light, half-finished packaging from his dead little brand, A few decorative pieces he and Jessica had picked out together while pretending it was all about aesthetics and not about making my home feel less like mine. There was a giant gold-framed floor mirror in the corner of the living room, one of those oversized pieces people buy because they've seen it in enough videos online to mistake it for identity. Daniel loved that mirror. Jessica loved that mirror. I had paid for that mirror, and I left it there. It felt almost poetic to leave him something massive to stare at. At 4:30, I made my last logistical call. The landlord answered on the third ring, distracted at first, then increasingly alert as I explained. "Hi," I said evenly. "I'm calling about apartment 12B. I've moved out today." A beat of confusion. "Roxanne, your lease still has 6 months on it." "I know," I said. "I'm forfeiting the security deposit. I'm also paying my half of the lease break penalty immediately. The remaining tenant, Daniel Carter, will be responsible for his half of the penalty and the full rent moving forward as of today." He made a choking sound like he had opened his mouth to object and forgotten how. That's not really how couples usually—" "We're no longer a couple," I said. There was a small silence after that. Then his voice changed. More careful, more businesslike. "I'll need that in writing. You'll have it in 10 minutes. I sent the payment while we were still on the call. Then I followed up with a formal email, clean and concise. Dates, unit number, intent, payment confirmation. No emotional leakage, no extra explanation. That was the thing about being underestimated. People assume calm means uncertain. It doesn't. Sometimes calm is just the absence of hesitation. When the truck was loaded, Samantha stood by the kitchen counter, arms folded, watching me as I tore a page off a small, sticky pad. "You're really doing the note?" she asked. "Yes. What are you writing?" I pressed the pen to paper and didn't overthink it. Hope they think this is funny, too. I stuck it on the fridge right at eye level. For a second, I just stood there. Not because I was doubting myself. Because I was letting the finality settle. The empty apartment hummed softly around me. Traffic murmured far below the windows. Somewhere down the hall, an elevator chimed. Ordinary sounds. End of the world timing. I thought about all the versions of myself that had lived in that apartment. The patient one. The rational one. The forgiving one. The woman who kept translating disrespect into temporary confusion because she loved someone and wanted the story to stay salvageable. I didn't hate her, but I was done being her. I picked up my bag, turned off the lights, and walked out. The lock clicked behind me with a neat, almost elegant finality. Before Daniel's flight had even landed back in Vegas, after whatever layover disaster he had probably complained through, I was sitting in my new apartment across town. It was smaller, yes, but it was brighter, cleaner, mine. A 3-month lease, minimal furniture for now, bare walls, one lamp in the corner, the couch pushed against the window. My books stacked in uneven towers because I hadn't unpacked them yet. The air smelled faintly like cardboard and fresh paint and freedom. Samantha dropped the last box by the kitchen island and looked at me carefully. "How do you feel?" I thought about it. My chest hurt a little. My body was exhausted. There was still a raw place inside me where Daniel's words had landed. But beneath all of that was something quieter. Relief. Like I can breathe, I said. After they left, I sat alone in the middle of my new living room and opened my phone. I blocked Daniel, then Jessica, then the rest of that orbiting little friend group who liked to weaponize ambition and call it honesty. I changed my voicemail greeting to something generic. I muted every mutual connection I could think of. I ordered takeout from the Thai place downstairs because I was too tired to assemble a life and cook at the same time. Then I showered, put clean sheets on my bed, and slept for nearly 10 hours without waking once. I didn't hear the explosion. I only felt the aftershock later. I didn't hear the moment everything fell apart for Daniel. I only heard about it afterward. Samantha called me Sunday night, her voice already carrying that tone, the one that meant she was trying not to laugh and be concerned at the same time. "You're going to want to hear this," she said. I leaned back against my new couch, phone pressed to my ear, the city lights bleeding softly through the window beside me. "Tell me." "Daniel got back tonight," she said. "Walked into the apartment and thought he'd been robbed." I closed my eyes briefly. "Of course he did." "Apparently," she continued, "he called the police, like full panic, said everything was gone. Furniture, electronics, kitchen stuff. He was losing it." I let out a slow breath. And 2 officers showed up, walked through the place, saw all his stuff still there, then saw your note on the fridge. I could picture it. The empty echo of the apartment, the yellowed bulbs casting dull light, the gold mirror reflecting a version of reality he wasn't ready to face. "What did they say?" I asked. Samantha snorted softly. "One of them told him, "Sir, this isn't a robbery. This looks like a breakup." Then they left. There it was. The moment consequence stops being theoretical. The moment reality refuses to be negotiated with. The silence after they left, Samantha added. He apparently just stood there, like his brain couldn't catch up. I didn't respond immediately. Not because I didn't have thoughts, but because none of them needed to be said. The second wave hit him Monday morning. The landlord called him, explained in very clear terms that I had formally exited the lease, that I had paid my portion of the penalty, that as of that moment, Daniel Carter was solely responsible for the full monthly rent, plus his half of the lease break fee. Wait, Samantha said, imitating his voice. What do you mean full rent? I could almost hear it, that mix of confusion and entitlement, as if reality had violated some unspoken agreement where I would always be there to absorb impact. He argued, she went on, tried to say you couldn't just do that. The landlord basically told him to read the lease. I smiled faintly, not out of cruelty, out of recognition. The third wave came from Vegas, the glamorous, high-value fantasy that had seemed so important just days earlier. Jessica and her group had lined up what they called connections, club promoters, VIP tables, free entry. What they didn't mention was the expectation attached to all of it. Daniel came home not just shaken, but broke. The experience came with a bar tab that didn't feel optional once you were already sitting at the table. The kind of social pressure that turns a free night into a financial mistake. And unlike before, there was no one quietly covering the difference. By Tuesday, my phone started lighting up with missed calls from unknown numbers. I didn't answer. By Wednesday, Samantha texted me, "He's calling me." I told her she didn't have to engage. She replied, "I'm not, but you should hear these." That night, we sat across from each other in her kitchen. A bottle of wine open between us, her phone on speaker. Voicemail 1 played. "Sam, hey, do you know where Roxanne is?" Daniel's voice was tight, uneven. "She's not answering. I think something happened. The apartment, everything's gone. I don't understand what's going on. Can you just tell her to call me?" Pause. Voicemail 2. His tone had shifted. "You need to tell Roxanne to pick up her phone," he said, sharper now. "This isn't funny. She can't just disappear like this. She's on the lease. She owes me an explanation." I took a sip of wine. Didn't say anything. Voicemail 3 came late. The timestamp read 2:13 a.m. "Sam, please," he said, voice cracking now. "I don't know what to do. The landlord called. I can't afford this place on my own. Jessica's not answering. None of them are. I'm sitting on the floor right now. I didn't think she would actually leave." Silence filled the kitchen after it ended. Samantha looked at me carefully. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "I'm fine." And I was. That was the part that surprised me the most. Not the situation, not the outcome, but the absence of guilt. For 2 years, I had been carrying both of us, emotionally, financially, logistically. Now, for the first time, I had put the weight back where it belonged, and he didn't know how to stand under it. "Are you going to call him?" Samantha asked gently. I reached for her phone, scrolled through the call log, and tapped his number. For a brief second, I looked at it. Then I hit block. "No," I said, and that was the end of the conversation. The next few months moved differently. Cleaner, like someone had removed a constant background noise I hadn't realized I was living with. I leaned into my work. There was a project no one else wanted, a complex AI modeling initiative that required long hours, patience, and a willingness to sit with problems most people avoided. I took it. And I didn't just complete it. I mastered it. 3 months later, I was called into a meeting with senior leadership, a promotion, a 20% raise, a new role on the data science and AI strategy team. I walked out of that room feeling something unfamiliar. Not relief, not validation, ownership. My life was no longer something I was stabilizing for someone else. It was something I was building, for me. I started going to the gym regularly, not as punishment, not as transformation, just as a way to feel present in my own body again. I slept better. I read again. I stopped anticipating someone else's moods before my own. And somewhere in the middle of all that, I started breathing differently, like my lungs had more space, like I wasn't bracing for impact anymore. I heard about Daniel occasionally, not because I asked, because information has a way of finding you when the story is unfinished on the other side. He couldn't find a roommate, couldn't cover the rent, couldn't manage the penalties. Within 2 months, he was evicted. He moved back in with his parents. Jessica? Gone. The entire high-value circle? Also gone. It turns out when you're no longer useful, you're no longer interesting. The irony wasn't lost on me. One afternoon, an unknown number called. I almost didn't answer. But something in me was curious. "Hello?" Roxanne, honey, a voice said, overly sweet. It's Linda, Daniel's mom. I closed my eyes briefly. Of course. Hello, I said, my tone neutral. I'm not sure why you're calling. Oh, Roxanne, she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound practiced. Daniel is going through a very difficult time. He's not himself. Those people he was around, they were toxic. He didn't mean what he said. I didn't interrupt. She's been crying, she continued. He misses you. He needs you. Can't you just talk to him? Needs. That word again. Always framed as urgency, never as accountability. This is all very embarrassing for him, she added softly. Embarrassing. Not hurtful. Not destructive. Embarrassing. And that told me everything I needed to know. Linda, I said calmly, what Daniel said to me was for him. What I did was for me. A pause. Then I added, please don't call this number again. And I hung up. Blocked. A week later, I got a message request. LinkedIn. From Jessica. I stared at her name for a long moment before opening it. Hey, Roxanne, it began. I think what you did to Daniel was really extreme. He's at rock bottom. You made your point. As the bigger person, you should reach out and help him recover. It's the least you can do. I read it twice. Not because I didn't understand it, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything. No acknowledgement, no accountability, just expectation. I typed one word. No. Then I blocked her too. Some people only understand value when access is gone. And by then, they're too late. A year passed. Not slowly, not dramatically. Just steadily. The kind of time that doesn't ask for attention while it's happening, but leaves everything different when you finally look up. My life was unrecognizable, in the best way. Work had become something I actually enjoyed, not because it validated me, but because I was no longer using it to compensate for something missing somewhere else. The AI project had opened doors I hadn't even considered before. I was leading conversations now, not just supporting them. My apartment felt like a reflection of me instead of a compromise. Clean lines, intentional choices, space that didn't feel like it was waiting for someone else to fill it. And I wasn't alone. His name was Adrian Cole. We met at a conference. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic. Just a conversation that didn't feel like effort. He was an architect. Thoughtful, precise, the kind of man who listened fully before he spoke. He didn't need to prove anything, which meant he didn't need to diminish anyone else to feel like more. He laughed at my dry jokes, respected my work without turning it into a comparison, asked questions because he was curious, not because he was waiting for his turn to talk. He treated me like a partner, not a project, not a resource. That's how we ended up at the City Tech Gala. A black tie event I would have dreaded a year ago. Too many people performing versions of themselves. Too many conversations that sounded like rehearsed ambition. But that night felt different. I wore a tailored black dress that moved easily when I walked. Adrian stood beside me in a tux that fit him like it had been made with intention instead of assumption. The room buzzed with low conversation, glasses clinking, the soft rhythm of something polished but not quite personal. We were laughing, actually laughing. He was telling me about a client who insisted on combining 3 architectural styles that absolutely should not coexist. It's like they want a building with an identity crisis, he said. I feel like I've lived in that building before, I replied. He smiled, that quiet kind of amusement that never felt forced. I'll be right back, I said, brushing my fingers lightly against his arm. Let me grab us more champagne. The bar was crowded. Voices layered over each other. Movement without direction. That subtle chaos that comes with too many people trying to look composed at the same time. And then I saw him. Daniel. The contrast was immediate. Not because he looked dramatically worse, but because he looked diminished. He wasn't a guest. He stood near the edge of the room, holding a tray of small branded energy drink samples, moving through clusters of attendees with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. The clothes were technically appropriate, but something about them didn't fit, like they belonged to a version of him that hadn't materialized. For a second, neither of us moved. Then our eyes locked. Recognition flickered across his face. Then something else. Hope. He handed off his tray without looking and started moving toward me, weaving through people with a kind of urgency that felt almost disorienting. Roxanne, he said when he reached me, slightly out of breath. Wow, you look... He didn't finish the sentence. His eyes moved over me, trying to process something that didn't align with whatever version of me he had kept in his head. Daniel, I said, my voice even. A nod. The kind you give someone you used to know. Can we talk? He asked quickly. There was no hesitation in me. No, I said. It wasn't sharp. It wasn't emotional. It was just true. He blinked, like he hadn't prepared for that answer. Please, he tried again, lowering his voice. Just a minute. Roxanne, I messed up. I know that now. Those people, that whole lifestyle, it wasn't real. You were. I didn't respond. I was an idiot, he continued, words coming faster now. I let them get in my head. I said things I didn't mean. I've been in therapy. I've been working on myself. I'm not that person anymore. There it was. The reconstruction narrative. The part where growth gets presented like a bargaining chip. I lost everything, he added quietly. The apartment, my job, my friends, everything. A pause. Then softer. You were the only real thing I had. I watched him carefully. Not coldly, just clearly. A year ago, those words might have reached something in me. Now they didn't have anywhere to land. I have to get back to my table, I said. I turned slightly. He reached out and caught my sleeve. Not aggressively, but with that same underlying assumption that access was still negotiable. Wait, he said, his voice tightening. You can't just walk away like this. After everything. You don't feel anything? I looked down at his hand, then back at him. And something in my expression must have shifted because he let go almost immediately. Daniel, I said quietly, you're not a joke to me. Something lit in his eyes. Relief. Hope. Desperation trying to reshape itself into possibility. I'm not? He asked. I shook my head once. You're not anything to me, I said. The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They just settled, like truth tends to do. His face changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. Like something inside him had finally aligned with reality. And then, hey, Adrian's voice came from beside me, warm and steady. His hand found the small of my back, grounding, familiar. I got us a table on the terrace, he said. Everything okay? I turned toward him, and without effort, my entire expression softened. Everything's perfect, I said. And it was. I glanced back at Daniel once. He was looking at Adrian now, then back at me, trying to understand something that no longer involved him. Excuse us, I said politely. Not dismissive, not cruel, just finished. Adrian and I walked toward the terrace, the noise of the room fading behind us. The night air was cooler outside, quieter, the city stretching out below in soft lines of light. I breathed in deeply and felt it. Not victory, not revenge, peace. I couldn't even remember the exact tone of Daniel's voice when he had called me a joke. It didn't matter anymore. That version of my life had already ended the moment I stopped accepting it. Some lessons don't come with closure. They come with distance, and that's enough.